Okay, this is Moshe coming to you from Israel and the Galilee. I'm having a horrible time with that tablet. Yesterday I was able to get it working, and then this morning they changed something around and I can't get it working. I think I might be on to the fix. There's a bar there. I got all the icons out of there, but it has some other controls in there that I can't remove. And I think because I have the thing loaded for large text, it's causing the problem. So I got to reduce the size of the text, and that might help. But I got so frustrated trying it this morning, I went back to the phone. I was trying. Oh, it knocks me out. Okay, very problematic devices, but I think that might be the problem with my iPad too. I've got it on large text, and that's the issue. So I can't get my supermarket to deliver. They don't want to process the order for me. And I got a similar thing, spillover, blocking a bar. They put this ad up, and the ad happens before you go to pay, to put your credit card or whatever you're going to do to pay in there, so they can try to sell you more stuff. So I try to get past the screen, and I can't. For a while I was able to, just by hitting it like a machine gun. Now it doesn't do that. So I think there's a spot on there that says to proceed to the closing out of your order, the payment, and it has slop over from other areas of their ad, then it doesn't work. So I think if I go to small print, it might do it. I don't know. The other thing I could do is try changing the browser for a third or fourth time. Apparently they're not responding to me. I don't think they're out of business over this, so it's me. It's problematic. I think as we progress in time that there's more and more mistakes being made by a lot of companies on their websites and programming, and stuff gets flawed. Okay. Anyway, what we're going to cover today is briefly war news, then we're going to discuss this generation, which is us, and the true gospel, and where do we think that takes us, and then we're going to look at prophecy for the DOB, for Israel, and we're going to try to see where we're at and what's going on. And so it's going to be very little news, and I'm not going to be spending a lot of time explaining things to people that are in the churches and why their doctrines don't line up with the Bible. They'll see it and they'll reject it, and they'll just go back to fiction instead of believing their Bible, and that's the way they operate. Nothing you can do about it. Okay, let me go into the live stream and make sure we got a live stream. See, this device, I can make it work with the large print there. I don't know. See, this device, I can make it. Pretty soon there's going to be, I think they're going to start getting programs using artificial intelligence, well, apps, that'll write programs for you. When, I don't know. Prophetic time may not allow, and we'll never see it. Okay. I don't expect a lot of people to come in today. People want to hear things like "Go Trump, go," and they don't want to hear Trump's a filthy liar and doesn't quit. You know, They don't want to hear a lot of anything negative about Trump. Now Trump is releasing the Martin Luther King murder files from the FBI, and that's likely to take the heat off him with Epstein. I'm very convinced now that he's up to his eyeballs in the Epstein thing. You're never going to see the Epstein files, guys. Unless Trump leaves office, then you might. He'll do anything, literally anything, anything. He'll destroy America before he would let himself get convicted for the Epstein stuff. So it's just never going to get there. You could completely give up and forget about him ever releasing the Epstein stuff, unless he redacts the daylights out of it. I'm quite confident that he was going to Epstein's Island and engaging in all the stuff. Look at his penthouse apartment in Manhattan, in Trump Tower. Now, these pictures have been removed from the internet, but I showed them on the YouTube channel many times. He had murals on the ceiling of false gods, like Zeus and things like that, on his ceiling, pictures of them in color, beautiful murals. That's no coincidence. These jackass demons are telling him that they're Zeus and Apollo, or whatever, Mercury, whatever, and he believes it. He's in a snare and he's in a deception, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And all he's doing is lying. Now he's getting mad at Netanyahu, finally. Maybe we'll see the falling out. There's no good news coming out of Syria. I'm not sure what's going on over there. I do not believe the Bedouins left Soweto. I think they're in the outskirts of Soweto. I don't know what they're getting ready for. I don't know what they're doing. They're afraid that, in my opinion, that the Druze are going to, if they leave, there's tens of thousands of them. If they leave, the Druze will go back and hit the Bedouins again and get in more revenge. And then the Bedouins will have to just come back, so they're sitting around there. Now, the Kurds up in northeastern Syria were preparing to help Jelani with the unification of the country, and said they would, surrender their weapons or join with his military or something like that, but they were going to surrender the weapons. After what happened with Giuliani and the Bedouins and the Druze, the Kurds came up with an announcement from one of their leaders that they're not giving up their weapons now because of what happened with the Druze. They're not idiots. Idiots, they're not. Ukraine and Russia are continuing to knock their lights out, and a lot of the survivalist, prepper-oriented news broadcasts are really dwelling on that, and Russia's going to go nuke. For 3 years, we've been hearing Russia's going to go nuke. Never went nuke. We're going to hear Russia's not unleashing on Ukraine. They're going to open up and give Ukraine all they got. We've heard that for years. Never happened. They don't got it. So they're launching hundreds of drones at a time. So it's a drone race now. Putin is saying, oh, if they give them more longer long-range weapons to hit Moscow and St. Pete, well, they already do hit those places, for crying out loud. And then he's going to leave the door open to hit the countries that gave him those weapons. This is just another completely empty threat from Putin. The last thing he wants to do is go after NATO right now. He's weak. He's like in a fight and he's wounded. He's not about to expand his fight. What are you, crazy? He doesn't want to run away from it because he still thinks he can win. And he's not that badly wounded. And the way it looks is Ukraine will probably win. Patriot batteries will be there sometime. I don't know, maybe a few weeks. Trump was saying hours or days. I wasn't saying hours, days. It's going to be weeks. They'll get them. So that whole war thing is interesting, and I certainly don't think you should ignore it. But I would be extremely shocked if it grew into a world war. Now, it could. I'd say, to be honest, there got to be about a 50% chance that Putin does get frustrated and it hits like Poland or Romania or something, and then NATO gets into it. It could happen. It really could. I'd give it 50%, but it hasn't happened yet, so. I do keep an eye on Ukraine, Russia, but I don't get over involved with that because it's the Middle East that's going to bring on prophecy, with the exception of the daughter of Babylon being destroyed in Isaiah 47 and Jeremiah 50:51. That's very important. So Yeshua in Matthew 24 spoke about this generation shall not perish, right? Well, I've walked you through that because we'll see the sign of the Son of Man in the clouds. We'll have everlasting life. And then we've got the 270s in Daniel 9:24, which the church has no idea exists. You do. And the second 70 begins when he appears, and the sign of his appearing, in addition, is going to be the sun goes dark and the moon turns red. When he comes to earth for real, as in beast and false prophet go into the lake of fire and New Jerusalem comes, then if you're observant and you read Joel chapter 2, what happens then is the moon goes dark and the sun goes dark and the stars fall like figs from a tree and fail to give their light. That's Yeshua coming to earth when the beast and false prophet go into the lake of fire in New Jerusalem, riding on a white horse with millions of angels on white horses, or however many angels he's coming with that thing. That's Revelation 19. So we got a 70-year run. So we have everlasting life, which is not immortality. And then we'll have a temple, and we observe the law, and we watch what we're doing. And there's going to be a great falling away, and you can't have a falling away until there's a coming in, and Israel hasn't come in yet. And it can't be the church falling away because they've never come in yet. Okay? When they come in, they leave the church. So that's not going to happen. And I know the church people aren't going to stay here and listen to me. I know that. Okay? I can't dedicate myself to those kind of people. When you read Matthew 13, there's 4 categories, with the seeds by the wayside and choked by the thorns and all. Okay. 3 of the 4 categories don't make it. So that's 75%. Broad and wide is the road to destruction, and many find it. There's a consistency. Straight and narrow is the way, and few find it, a fourth. Okay? Now, does that mean that a lot of people in the church world, in churchianity, with the Schofield and the Darby nonsense, that they're going to come out of it? It could be. It could be. When there's people preaching signs and wonders, like Elijah and Enoch, and Apostle John, and possibly the anointed prince, they're going to respond. The people, they're going to, okay, now a lot of them are going to respond, but it's not really good, and they're going to fall away. It's going to be more mechanical. Oh, he's got signs and wonders. He's of God. That's the true gospel. I'm going to go along with him. See, they're not following Jehovah and his word, the true gospel, like we are. They're following some guys doing signs and wonders. Not the same thing. It'll look like the same thing, but not exactly. Like with children, I don't know if anyone ever told you this, but you could have children that grow up and they're going to serve the God of their parents, which is not what I mean. They're going to serve the God their parents serve, but because their parents do, following their parents, and then they get older and they fall away. Were they ever really there to start with? Or who were they following? You know, you got to ask yourself those questions. When it says, you and your whole house shall be saved, it doesn't say you and all your grown adult children living in other parts of the world are going to be saved, and then their children, because they have their own house now. Okay? So what I think it means is those that are living under your roof. So if you were taking care of grandma and grandpa, or mom and dad, would that apply to them? Probably. Think about it, you know. I'm not God, okay? I am not Jehovah. I don't know, you know, what will happen, but I believe I've been shown you and your whole house shall be saved means those living under your roof. It doesn't mean, you know, 35-year-old children living with their own families and their own roof, and you know, it doesn't go that way. Now, what about if you, as an adult, grow up and you've got your own roof and your parents or your grandparents need a place to stay where someone could look after them? Maybe they got Alzheimer's and you don't want them walking out of the house at 3 o'clock in the morning, and things like that. What can you do? Well, if they're in your house, I would expect it fits in. What if somebody's in your house that's not in your family? Well, what are they doing in your house? If you're cohabitating outside of marriage and, you know, we're supposed to avoid the appearance of evil, but let's say they're actually, you know, living together, not legally, not lawfully according to Torah. You know what I'm saying? Fornication, well, I wouldn't think they're going to be doing that great. You know, I wouldn't expect it to apply to them. You know, that was just something. Okay. So let me do some praise and. Okay. This was that idiot thing. It put the, update the app up and blocked us out. Why a company would do that is only satanic. What kind of brainless company knocks you off the air because they want to torment you to do updates? See what I'm saying with these people? You know? I'm afraid to do the update because I did the update on the tablet and I couldn't use the live stream option. It's unbelievable how bad they're getting. I'm sorry about that. All right. I don't think it'll happen again. So back to Gaza. So if we weren't restricted by Joe Biden early on, right away, in a matter of 1 or 2 days, 3 days, the internet would be out, the water would be cut off, the electricity would be cut off, we would seal it up, they couldn't leave, they couldn't go to Egypt, they couldn't go to Israel. Maybe they could smuggle a little bit of stuff in through the tunnels from Egypt, but we would have picked up a massive amount of that. Okay? So this is the situation, and it would have worked, and the war would have been over in a matter of days. Believe me, days. Just days. Then what would have happened? Well, it no doubt would have been interesting. Hamas would have had to starve to death or agree to demilitarize, come out, and then we would have had to deal with them. I don't know what we would have done with them. We wouldn't machine gun them like what went on in World War II. I don't know what we would have done with them, but we would have figured something out. Okay? And then when we had them collected, we could have put them in a prisoner of war camp with barbed wire fences and a lot of guards with tanks and Humvees and guard towers and machine guns and lights and, dogs and sensors. We used the Belgian Shepherd, the Malinois, whatever they call it. They're very intelligent dogs. They're extremely challenging mentally, and they're not for everybody. These things could go over a 12-foot fence. These little guys, they maybe get 60, 75 pounds, I think, someplace in there. They can be very affectionate, friendly dogs, good with children and everything, if you keep them stimulated. So if you live on 2 acres, and you've got to have a good relationship with the dog to make sure he don't be jumping the fence. That's not so hard to do. You could do it. And he can run around on the property and people play with him, or you get a pair of them. And if you get a male and a female, the chances of them having a fight are rather limited compared to the same sex. And they run around and entertain each other to a good extent. And, you got to know what you're doing. That's not a great idea for your first or your second dog. Maybe your third dog, But they're very, very intelligent. There's a little collie dog for herding animals that is also quite intelligent. So I forget it's a shepherd. I forget what it is. You can look it up. Very, very bright. But these things are super bright. They parachute out of planes. The Israeli soldiers put them on a harness and they go down with the soldier on the airplane. They're smart enough to understand they're going to be okay. And they can attack people. They're pretty ferocious fighters. They're very fast, very athletic, and they could be a problem around other animals, and they can be a problem. They're very protective, and you got to be an experienced dog owner. But anyway, the other thing that Netanyahu wanted to do in Gaza was flood the tunnels. Now, we weren't going to bring Evian water over here from France or Fiji water from Fiji and put it in the tunnel. We were going to use the ocean water. So you get a generator which runs a big pump, and you put a big, 4-inch hose or a big fire hose type thing on there. You take it in the water and you suck the water from the ocean up, and you got to lay other hoses and get enough pressure to bring it to where the tunnel is and flood the tunnel. Oh no, Biden and them didn't want us to do that. They told us it would cause an ecosystem catastrophe. So we couldn't flood the tunnels. What I said they should have done is they should have took a couple of gasoline trucks. The trucks that come to the gas station where they sell 7-Eleven kind of things, and they fill the gas. Okay, take 1 or 2 of those to a tunnel, put the hose in there, empty the tank of fuel, gasoline, into the tunnel, right? Now, they had doors in these tunnels that were blast doors. like what you see on a submarine when they're going down and they're going to get depth charged, and they spin the handle and they lock their doors and different compartments, so in case they get a breach in the hull, the water doesn't get throughout the whole ship, just in one section. Well, they use doors like that in a similar fashion. So I don't know what would have happened if you put the gasoline in there. If you lit it, would it have melted the door? Probably. Maybe it wouldn't have worked because it didn't have enough oxygen. I don't know. But it would have been worth a try. And that might have been the end of them. I don't know. Just the fumes of the gasoline would have drove them out of a lot of the tunnel. Maybe that wasn't the right way to do it. I don't know. But the water would have, I think, eventually worked. You see, the blast doors were attached to the wall of the tunnel. So they could, I think they were designed to sustain hand grenades or, RPG, small charges of explosives. I don't think they were designed to sustain 25 pounds of explosives. And the pressure from putting the water in likely would have pushed those barrier doors down because they weren't dug into anything that's secure. There was just a tunnel, for crying out loud. It wasn't heavy, deep, security. So I think the tunnel thing should have been exploited, but no, Biden stopped us. And then they wanted us to feed the people. They didn't. Why were they doing all this? They were doing the Henry Kissinger doctrine. Israel cannot be allowed to win a war. This is forbidden. Israel may not win any wars. Okay? So here we are today. The murderers in Gaza are still there almost 2 years later with the hostages, and the nations of the world are screaming, end the war. They're not screaming that they're not saying, Hamas, give the hostages back, give your weapons back, and end the war. No, they're telling Israel to end the war. But Israel didn't start the war. It's ridiculous, and they want Hamas to keep the hostages. On their own books, it's a war crime to take civilian hostages. Insult to injury, they took infants, people with dementia, elderly people with dementia, all kinds of things, like children, civilians. You understand what a war crime that is, that they're forgiving? You should. Okay? Now, even if we let them have food, let them have water, we could have done that. We could have let them have water. Okay? Cut the food, cut the internet, cut the electricity. They wouldn't have been able to stay in the tunnels if you cut the electricity, because they were building tunnels under hospitals mostly, and they were using the generators from the hospital, and they were bringing air into the tunnel. If you killed the electricity, you killed the hospital electricity, and they wouldn't get air. Now, the hospital had enough of, they had generators, and they could run the generators for a few hours, but all we would have had to do was go to the hospitals and shut the generators off. See, it would have had it been brutal, because the hospital would scream, oh, we got sick patients here, okay? But look what happened. All the hospitals got bombed. Tens of thousands of people got killed. It was way more bloodthirsty this way, the way Biden did it, and Trump followed in Biden's footsteps perfectly. Has Trump had Netanyahu fill the tunnels with water or gasoline? No. Has Trump insisted on more and more humanitarian aid? Yes. You see? It's the same Henry Kissinger doctrine. Does Trump want to give the land back to Israel? We gave it to them in 2005 for peace. Do you know that? You should. Who pushed us to give it to them? The United States. What Israeli politician was actually in favor of this back then? Benjamin Netanyahu, the piece of garbage himself. Okay? He was in favor of it. Everybody lets him slide for that. So they took a peace gesture and turned it into a war camp. Okay? So don't you think we should just take the land back? Well, then what do we do with them? What would you biblically do to them? You'd wipe them out. That's what will happen in prophecy. They deserve it. They get wiped out. But what would the nations do? I don't know. They'd scream and yell. If you pushed them in the sea, they'd scream and yell. But they won't take them back in their own country because they want Israel to have the problem. And that's why they keep giving them money, because if they didn't give them money, they would leave. And that's why they give them humanitarian aid. They got a free ride. Yeah, they got to live in a tent camp. They don't have to work. Believe me, they get plenty of food. Okay? We've had videos, I put them on Telegram, of restaurants they go into. They're busy. They sit in restaurants. Yeah, come on, it's a joke. This is a joke to make Israel look bad, and this is going to cost the nations plenty. Jeremiah 30, verse 11. They keep it up. They don't want to stop. Okay? And Netanyahu, how guilty is he? He's plenty guilty for letting them put the yoke around our neck. Now Trump's mad at him, and he's saying Netanyahu's a wild man, and like he's a cowboy, and he doesn't want to listen and doesn't want to do anything, you know. Okay? That's what goes on. So Trump is following right in Biden's footsteps with Gaza. Biden never helped us with Hezbollah, although they said they would. Trump never helped us with Hezbollah, although he said, I don't even think he ever said he would. The whole Syria thing was an unexpected wild card that in 11 days Bashar Assad got taken down and ran away with all their money, and this new idiot popped up. And then Trump gave this new idiot sanction relief, and then this new idiot went ahead and did genocide, and now there's a bill in Congress which may not pass in America about the sanction relief going away if he doesn't abide to certain conditions, which I think is going to mean no genocide. Now, I don't know if Trump will veto that. I don't know if it'll get enough votes or anything. Right now, it's just a bill, so it doesn't mean a lot. It's worthy of note to know it's there, but it could be meaningless. It could fail. And then by the time both houses start massaging it, it could be worthless. I don't know. Okay? So this is a big problem that the Americans have created. Okay? And that's why the Gaza war is lasting so long, and they try blaming us. I'll be right back in a minute. Quick break. Biden is very much in the no Israel camp. He doesn't want an Israel. And Trump is in the fake Israel camp. In other words, he wants an Israel that he can control. And Netanyahu is just the sucker to play into it with him. But he's losing control of Netanyahu. And that's from too much tossed salad. He doesn't know what's going on. And Netanyahu was bombing stuff in Syria, and he's going around with jets, and he's calling him a maniac, and he just attacks, and he's just, You see, Trump uses Netanyahu and the country of Israel as an attack dog. See, he could threaten Iran, and Iran won't listen to him because they know he's a punk and he won't do anything. He's a punk. But what he did to stop the fighting is he threatened Iran with Israel. What did he tell them? He could have told them, I'm going to give them B-1, B-2 bombers. I'm going to give them destroyers. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to give them F-22s. I'm going to give them missiles that they could launch that are going to blow you up. I'm going to go bring them another 25,000 bombs. Israel will bomb you every day for 6 months till there's nothing left, and I'll support them. I'll give them the weapons for free. And that's what shut Iran down. They were afraid because they know Netanyahu wants to get them. And Netanyahu is not afraid to kill them. Trump is. So Trump uses Israel as the bulldog. He can't use Israel against Russia. It's not practical. It can't work. So he threatens Putin, and all it boils down to is sanctions. This is a guy that thinks, this is a transactional individual that thinks they can control the nations by being the hammer of the whole earth using sanctions. Not the way it was in the 50s and 60s when America was building up with the Cold War and all that, and they were running revolutions, overthrows, dominating people economically. The dollar was strong as all get up. Gold was nothing, silver was a dollar an ounce. The currency was backed by silver, which is enough to make it pretty good. There's not a lot of difference between gold and silver. Gold is better, but silver can still work. And Americans were living good until about 73, when Biden floated the dollar. Not Biden, Nixon. Americans were living good. I remember that every year it was getting better. The next year would get better. We'd have, what was my idea of getting better? Well, first of all, we didn't have the open immigration in America killing the country. Okay? It started, but it was pretty small. You had them coming from Puerto Rico, and that was a failure. They came into America, and by and large, the vast majority of them in the 50s, 60s, and 70s were not working. They were going second generation welfare, and they were just everything free in America. That's from the West Side Story movie. And that's what they were doing. They were doing that. I had an uncle that inspired the guy. He knew the guy that did West Side Story. He felt very strong that he inspired him to make it, because at that point in my uncle's life, he was teaching in ghetto schools to Puerto Ricans and other people that were poor and uneducated. And you go into these people's houses, there's children there, mom and dad are there, and they got nothing, no books, no newspapers, no magazines. They don't read. They got a TV going, that's it, or music. So the kids don't read, and they learn how to get on welfare, and they did all kinds of welfare fraud and stuff like that. Then they got into drugs, and they were, they got gangs, and, they were not working out, but there wasn't that much of them, and they were concentrated in New York only. So The cars got better every year. Inflation was not insane, but it did happen. But it wasn't insane inflation. Okay? Houses were cheap. Okay? My uncle bought a house, I think in the 60s, in California, in a rural area, and he paid about $5,000. It was on a pretty good piece of land, probably a third to half an acre, and it was 3 or 4 bedrooms. It was a blue collar house. It had a garage too, 2-car garage. And that was it. Okay, that's what houses cost. That's in the 60s. In the 50s, they were $2,500. Okay, in the 50s, gasoline was, I think if you got regular, you'd be paying 15, 17 cents a gallon. I know in the late 60s, I remember what I used to pay. I had a Triumph TR3 in the summer in New York, and I used to put $5 in the tank Friday afternoon. And it would last me all weekend because I drove around all weekend with the thing. And it was about 25 cents a gallon for Super Shell, which was a very high octane gas, about 100 octane, 101 or something like that. It was really up there. Okay, that's all it cost. So in the 50s, it was, 15, 17 cents. Right after World War II, it was probably 11, 12 cents, 13 cents. Nobody worried about gasoline. You could go, put $1 in your tank, $1's worth of gas, and run around for quite a while with that, The cars had good size engines, but a lot of cars were 6 cylinders, and they didn't have a good size engine. And they were pretty economical. Okay, there were no seat belts, there were no bucket seats, really. They were bench seats for the most part, although the Mustang had them. But most cars were bench seats. The TVs kept getting better. The screens got bigger. They started with more and more color. Color TVs in the 50s, you didn't see them. In the early 60s, you saw them, but they were expensive. Like if you wanted a 17 or a 19-inch screen, you might have had to spend, as much as $800 or $1,000, at least $500 or $600. But you got to understand, back then people would live in New York City in an apartment, and their rent would be $75 a month. Okay. If you made $100, $125 a month in New York City, you had a living. You were okay. You could have a nice place to live, buy a used car, take vacations. It was a lot of money. These color TVs were a lot of money, and there was very few shows in color TV. Ed Sullivan was one of the earliest. The ball games with the Yankees, there were no Mets yet, I think. The Yankee ball games were in color, and I think some football was in color. There was very little in color. So not that many people bought it, But when you got to around 66, 67, 68, by 67, 68, people were buying color TVs that weren't that expensive. But the screens were still curved. They didn't have stereo in the screens. They had just put, the old paper speakers in about that big. They put 2 of them in sometimes. You didn't have cable TV, so you had antennas. You could put an antenna on your roof, and that worked pretty good, but not great. When it rained, you got snow on the screen with dots, and if it snowed, it was even worse. And some stations came in better than others. And then if you got rabbit ears, they had portable TVs that came on a rolling stand. The TV would usually have like maybe a 19 or a 21-inch screen or a 17-inch screen, even a 15-inch. They were about 5 inches thick. They had a handle, and they weighed about 20 pounds, 30 pounds. So you wheeled them around. You can go from room to room with those. And they had rabbit ears, and you had to keep moving them, and you put aluminum foil on them. We kept, and then in the late 60s, they came out with stereos. Well, that might have been mid 60s. People were buying stereos. We had stereophonic sound. Okay, they were making stereophonic records. The records were 78s, big records, right? And they had little 45s for one hit song, like one 3-minute song would be on a 45, and then they have a whole album on a bigger 78. And the quality of those vinyl records for reproducing the sound, like in the days when the Beatles were out there, like, 66, 65, 66, by 66, 67, the quality of those is better than what they have today. And people buy them as collector items, those vinyls. And you had a diamond needle, it was called a diamond needle made out of diamond, and you had a record player that, was of varying quality, and you put it on there and you'd play, and it would go through stereo speakers. They're not like the speakers you have today, but they were pretty good. They were good too. They were entertaining. So if you played Boston Symphony Orchestra, you'd hear the drums from here and the violins from there, that kind of thing. Then they had them in the car. You used to be able to get 4 speakers in your car, and you'd have some stereophonic effect in your car. Everything was affordable. Airplane prices were not so bad. Cars were easy. Insurance back then was, $75, $100 a year. If you had a driver's license, you could drive most trucks and drive a motorcycle. They didn't have motorcycle licenses. And the driver's licenses didn't even have your picture on it. It had the color of your eyes, the color of your hair, your height, and your weight. Clothing was very good. It was cotton and wool, and they had linens, and they had good fabrics back then. It wasn't all synthetic garbage, and it was nice. It worked out well. And people, there was no internet, there was no cable, so people had a life. Now, what people used to do is they would watch the TV. Prime time really started, the truth time prime time was 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. 7 o'clock was, sometimes they had good shows at 7 o'clock, but usually it was 8 o'clock. Shows went 2 ways. They went 30 minutes or 60. Movies they wouldn't show in that time period. Commercials were rampant and massive. They drove you crazy. And people would, like in the warm weather in my neighborhood in the Bronx, people would sit outside on chairs and talk in the evening. Unheard of today. The neighbors would, each building would sit outside and talk. It was funny, each of the apartment buildings, people actually knew each other and were friendly. And not everybody went outside, but some did. And then, people would miss their show because they were sitting outside in the nice weather. And we didn't have any recorders to record the show. The only time you would see that show again is in the summer. They ran the reruns. So they shut down sometime in June, usually, for the summer. They shut down for Christmas. Thanksgiving, they took a week off, the people on the shows. They would run 25 shows a season, something like that, even 30. Not like today where they run 10 or 12. They run a lot of them. And they didn't make that much money. They probably made a few $1,000 a show. They weren't millionaires. They get wealthy over time. they would take a week off for Thanksgiving, 2 weeks for Christmas and New Year's. Then they would run again, and they took a week for Easter, I think, and then they ran till sometime in June, and then they shut down for the summer. They take about 10 weeks off, and then the new season would start after Labor Day in the fall. And it was a hard job working in TV. A lot of the movie stars didn't want to work in TV because you had to get up early in the morning and go to the set, go to the studio and work all day. And that went on almost every day of the week. So they didn't like it. You know? So, yeah, people were happier. Now everything gets worse. You know, we never walked around thinking, oh, we're going to have war, we're going to have destruction, everything's going to, you know, we're going to get, you know, we were just, you'd look forward to the next year and you'd think the next year would be better. You'd go to college, that was my area, you know, we would go to college and we knew we'd get good jobs when we got out of college. It didn't really matter tremendously what major you had, you'd get a good job. Okay? A lot of kids I knew became teachers. Why? They had 2 weeks off for Christmas. They had a big break for Thanksgiving, 4 days. They had about 2 weeks for Christmas. And then they had an Easter break, which was about 10 days. And then they had 10 weeks off in the summer. So they liked traveling in their summers. Or some of them worked in the summer. They worked at camps. They worked in the Catskill Mountains, running camps. And they, some of them taught summer school, stuff like that, you know. Anyway, that's what's going on. So the Gaza thing was imposed on us. What I believe Netanyahu did, and I don't think Biden cared, and I don't think Trump cared, and that's because they want Gaza. Well, Trump wants Gaza. And that's Netanyahu blowing up the buildings constantly. It's like almost every day. Houses, buildings, anything, sidewalks, you know. The idea is to make it unlivable and to make the rebuilding so expensive. It's nice to run around talking about rebuilding, right? But who's going to pay for it? Now, let's get something straight. The people in Mexico to Argentina, okay, they're not going to give 10 cents to rebuild Gaza. You got that straight? Okay. Taiwan will give a pittance, okay, just to make it look good. The Philippines will give a tenth of a pittance. Australia will give, but they don't have much to give with. New Zealand, they'll go through the motions of giving something. Japan will come up with something, not great. South Korea, something, not great. Okay? The other Middle East countries, they'll give plenty. Saudi, Jordan, you know, Oman, Kuwait, they'll all give. Okay? That's where it would have to come from. Europe will come up with something, and they'll give plenty too. But you could have a level of this where plenty isn't going to cut it. When you're talking, you know, to rebuild it 10 or 15 or 18 billion dollars, it could even be more than that. It could be, some people are saying it's 200-300 billion. We'd give them weapons to Ukraine, increasing their NATO budget. I don't think these Europeans are going to want to start shoveling, you know, $4 or $5 billion a month into Gaza. Where do the Gazans go when they're rebuilding? Oh, that's easy. You put them in one part of Gaza, and then you rebuild the other part, and then you move them over. Well, that's way more complicated than that, because you're gonna got 2 million of them living in one part of Gaza. You know how many years it's gonna take to build housing for 2 million? Probably 4 or 5 years. Really? And you can't move them all back in there. You know, it's. So Trump is letting Netanyahu do that, and then he could grab Gaza for his buddies. He thinks prophecy's never going to end, and they can have their gambling casino resorts on the Mediterranean on a beach over there. And Israel could go fight the war. Our kids could die over there. And then he gets to keep the land. Trump does, well, for America. You think Jehovah's real happy about that? You think that might be the last straw? And the nerve of Trump to lift the sanctions off of an ISIS, Al-Qaeda genocidal lunatic running Syria next door to us with a common border, takes sanctions off this idiot. You don't see Trump turning the oil fields back and the refineries back over to Giuliani, do you? No. Trump's as dark as the rest of them, and as stupid too. Now, when he was president, you know, before Biden, when he first got in, you're talking 8 or 9 years ago, I think he was sharper mentally than he is now. He's old. I don't think he's cutting it mentally. Is he as bad as Biden? No, he's not getting lost on a stage, but he's getting lost with his sanctions. He doesn't know what he's doing anymore. He's so, the American military must be so bad, because I don't know when, starting after the Iraq War, around 1990 or 91, I think they started putting ghetto kids that needed a place to live, that had no future, into the military. And these people are not patriots. They just wanted to make a living, have a place to live, and get a life. And the military did that. You know, you go in for 2 or 3 years, you get a little rank, and then when you re-up, you go in for another 2 or 3 years, or 4, they give you re-enlistment bonus. Oh, now you can buy a car, furniture, you know, and you start getting more rank, and your pay gets higher, and then you re-up again and again. So they weren't working as rocket scientists, a lot of these kids. They're working in food preparation. So over time, they learned how to do it. They got better and better at it. They made ranks, and they made some sort of high-level sergeant. They got some decent pay, off base living allowance, got married. A lot of times the person they married is in the military. Now they got 2 paychecks. They got kids. They had a life from this, you know? And then after 20 years, they retire and they can work as an aircraft mechanic, if that's what they did, electricians, communication. They had a lot of ways to work in the civilian sector. So it worked for them. But the missing ingredient is these were not patriots trying to build up America. These were people trying to use the American military for self-betterment. It doesn't make them evil, rotten people, but it's not the same thing as patriots. There's very few patriots in there. The officers, the pilots, you know, these people probably are patriots, but you know, I saw a video, it was a few years ago, there was an aircraft carrier, and these guys were just for amusement, took a life preserver with the flashing light, and they threw it overboard, and they sounded an overboard alarm or something, and people saw the life preserver flashing, so they had to stop the aircraft carrier, get the people out there on boats, helicopters going up in the air, and then they found an empty life preserver apparently, and they knew it was a bogus stunt. The other thing I think they did is they took account of everybody on the ship. Every unit, had it, and they had nobody missing. There's another way they could get to the bottom of it, Now that's people that hate the military, but they live off the military, So if the military starts getting into combat and getting into trouble and getting shot and wounded and killed, I think you'll have a lot of defections. Russia's suffered from those. North Korea, when they went to Ukraine, they were suffering from that. I think that's going to be rather common. Israel does not suffer from that at all. And I don't know about Ukraine. I don't think so. I think Trump's really afraid of war. He doesn't know what's going to happen, and he's just tripping around, using Netanyahu as a bulldog. So he's using Israel as a proxy. You think America is in a good sight with Jehovah for doing that? Oh, no. Oh, no. See, the reality is Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon, Egypt, Djibouti, parts of Kenya, Uganda, Sudan and South Sudan, and Ethiopia. They're squatting on Israel's land that God gave to us by covenant. And no American president is ever going to want to write that or correct that. And they're not going to help Israel. They're trying to get Israel to not get that land back, ever. Because they report to the God of the dead, Satan. Every one of these countries, he's the God of this age. The age hasn't closed out yet. It closes out when Yeshua appears in the clouds. So that hasn't happened yet. So Satan's still running these places. How do you think Jehovah feels? Well, he feels like Jeremiah 30, verse 11. That's how he feels. Zechariah 12, And Satan cultivates self-hating Israelites, self-hating Jews all over that serve him and turn against the Jews because now they're with Satan and he tells them, oh, you're not an Israelite, or whatever the heck he tells them, you're one of mine. I don't know what he tells them. I don't care. It's a lie, whatever it is. And they, they turn against Israel, and that's what you see with the government of Israel. They don't want Israel to fulfill prophecy because where does that leave them? As despots in a bad way. So they want to keep things bad. So where this generation, which is, you read that in, Matthew 24, shall not perish till these things get fulfilled. And they won't, because we'll have the everlasting life, which means you're going to live a long, long time like they did with the flood. My people's days before the flood. My people's days shall be like that of a tree. A child shall die at 100. And all we got to do is run the 70-year clock out till we get in New Jerusalem, and then we eat from the tree of life and drink from the water of life, and then we have not everlasting life. There is no death in New Jerusalem. Does that mean we have that spiritual body? No, it means there's no death in New Jerusalem. That's what that means. So you don't have to worry about dying in New Jerusalem. Okay. These people that run the countries of the world are so demented, they gotta go. And they think it's never going to change. It's just going to go on forever and ever and ever. And the Satan bots think that too. You can't sit down and convince them. Look, let me give you a rundown. Earth, let me go get it in the scripture. Maybe we'll use Mark 13 today. We'll use a different one. Very similar though. Mark 13. Let me find the right verses. So we'll go in verse 3. I will do the whole thing. And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are there. And Yeshua answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now, is it possible, because here it says buildings, let's check the word for buildings, 36:19. Let's see how Strong's uses it in English. Did I pass it? Where did it go? Thayer's Strong. It would mean building, edifice, structures, yeah. So does that mean that the wall could not have been knocked down? Well, you could make a case for that, I suppose, but it says, these great buildings, there shall not be left one stone upon another. So I don't think the wall around these great buildings, the temple, would have been saved or spared. That shall not be thrown down. And as because they would have knocked the walls down when they swarmed in and so forth. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, over against the temple, it's a third of a mile east, the Mount of Olives, a third of a mile east of the temple area. Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign when these things shall be fulfilled? Jesus answering them began to say, Take heed lest any man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be you not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. Okay. So the end of what? The end of the age, possibly, or the end of the earth, I don't know. And when you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be you not troubled, for such things must need be, but the end shall not be yet. Probably the end of everything is what he's referencing, I would think, but it could be the end of the age. I don't know. For nation or heathens, heathens shall rise against heathens, and kingdoms, basilia, rulers or reign of power against kingdom and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places. We've got a surge of those. And there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. So there shall be famines and troubles. Troubles is like civil unrest, protests, demonstrations. We've got that. Famines. Okay. 24 states are suffering from drought. Does that affect your food supply? Yeah. Do fires burn your food supply? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Have we seen the fires in the cities yet? No. But you got to remember that God tells the people to come and attack the daughter of Babylon, America, are going to get a great reward from looting and pillaging. So if he burns everything up, there's nothing for them to loot and pillage. So a lot of this burning up may come after the fact, or it's just not going to be every place in America gets it. Okay? And you can get, now a famine doesn't mean there's no food. It could, but normally a famine means there's a short supply of food. So if you see a lot of supermarkets getting looted and pillaged and burned, and you see riots that way, which would be disturbances, and you see fires burning them, and then you could get then the drought and bad weather. There's heat waves hitting that wrecks the crops and stuff like that. There was one country, I think, somewhere in the Middle East, where they were hitting very high temperatures. It went to 50 degrees, I think. And the chicken farmers, their chickens were dying. He was just throwing them out in the street for people to eat. He couldn't keep them alive. He had no way to keep them cool. Earthquakes in diverse places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. Now, the famines could be all over the world. They don't have to just be in America. You got to understand that too. It doesn't mean just America. Give me a second here. All right. So that's the beginning of the sorrows, and the sorrows is the birth pangs. The word is really the spasms, a woman in travail, okay? That's not the actual birth, it's before it. And we've been seeing that for quite a while. And then it says, but take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils And he said, take heed to yourself. He's addressing the apostles. They were the disciples then, but he was addressing them. They'll take you to councils in the synagogues. What are you, in the synagogues? They're going to take you to the synagogues in America. They have no authority, the synagogues. Or Europe, they have no authority. It's to them back in that time in Egypt, in Israel. You shall be beaten and you shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake. That sounds like something that's going to happen today with kings and rulers. I don't think so. For my sake, for a testimony against them. And the gospel must first be published among all nations, all heathen. Now, did that perhaps happen back then? Well, amongst all heathen? Let's check that word for all. The whole, no, I don't think it happened then. They went into parts of Europe, Corinth and Rome and all that, and preached over there, but I don't think they went to the rest of the world. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought, you shall speak neither do you premeditate, but whatsoever shall be given you in that hour, that speak, for it is not you that speak, but the Holy Spirit. Yeah, I don't see this in Zechariah 12, Malachi 3 and 4. It's not there. Okay. Now, the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, and children shall rise up against their parents and shall cause them to be put to death. This could have been happening in 70 AD or in persecution days before then in Israel. And you shall be, it was a persecution, and the believers left Jerusalem. The only ones that stayed were the apostles, okay? And you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Well, hated is something different than getting killed. We're hated and disliked, and they don't fellowship with us and stuff like that. So this is likely pertaining to us. But when you shall see the abomination of desolation, now we're in Ezekiel 8 to 11, Ezekiel 38 and 39, Zechariah 14, the whole book of Joel, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand where it what not, let him that readeth understand, then let them that be in Judah flee to the mountains. And that's then, down the road a lot. Then let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house. neither enter therein to take anything neither to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray you that your flight be not in the winter. Well, it just talks about the flight. Then he tells you if somebody says Christ is here or there, don't listen to him. For false Christs and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. This isn't for now. This will be with the beast and the false prophet. But take you heed, as far as I know, it's not for now, but take you heed. Behold, I have foretold you all things. But in those days after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. Now, when it says they shall see him, it means he's appearing in the clouds with power, with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. He's going to get them from all over. Now, that is the tares and the wheat parable in Matthew 13, where the tares get taken out by the angels so you don't uproot the wheat. There it is. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that the summer is near. So you in like manner, when you shall see these things come to pass, know that it is near, even at the doors. Well, we've been seeing these things come to pass. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass, the generation that sees these things, that's us, till all these things are done. All these things is everything's over, where the earth is destroyed, I would think. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word, you see, when the heaven and earth pass away, it's not a new heaven and an earth, it's over. That's the all things. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take you heed which take you heed, watch, and pray, for you know not when the time is. For you know not when the time is. Watch and pray. Well, we do that. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch you therefore, for you know not when the master of the house cometh, at evening or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. So you see people that just don't, they say, well, they don't want to deal with prophecy. They want to study, love and peace and joy and what happened in history. That's not what the Lord told you to do. You're barking up the wrong tree and you're being disobedient and you're asking for trouble. We do watch, don't we? Sure we do. Of course we watch. Okay, let me look at the live stream and then we'll get into some other things real quick. Let's see what we got here. If we got any questions or drifted off coming in from Tijuana to the tunnel bed rail. I don't know what that means. Okay. Iranians are coming through tunnels into California. Oh my gosh, that's doom and gloom on the way. That's not good. Not good. I want to check something real quick. Okay. Get my notes. We got a prayer request here. This is a toss request for DB, Delta Bravo, DB, Delta Bravo, DB. Toss with the whole enchilada for DB. And we have, terrible thing. Okay, KH, Kilo Hotel, KH, Kilo Hotel, KH. For KH and husband, Kilo Hotel and husband healing, general healing. KH has gone to the hospital from a fall. Doesn't appear to be that major, no broken bones, but pray for healing for KH and husband. Okay. There's a fire now called the Burdoin, Burdoin fire. It's at 11,000 acres in the state of Washington. That's a lot. After the attacks on the Druze minority in Syria, in Sueda, the spokesman for the Kurds, the SDF organization, that's their military militia name, they're backed by America and Israel. I think I covered this already. They said under the present situation with genocide, Giuliani, they're not giving up their weapons. And I don't blame them. So extreme weather, I want to remind you, damages crops and food. Floods don't help, heat don't help, drought don't help, fires, and you get it. You can get there pretty quickly with these things. So they keep making us bring more and more humanitarian aid into Gaza, and it keeps making the situation worse and worse, and it doesn't end. And Witkoff is going back to Qatar with his crazy theories about getting Hamas to make a peace deal, and more of the idiocy that Trump keeps promoting. I'll be right back. All right. So what I want to do is I want to see if we can learn some things about timing from Jeremiah 50 and 51. I don't want to go through every verse because that knocks you out, me anyway, and I've already been on a while, but I'll be scanning it and I'll be bringing up the references that I think we want to deal with, that I will anyway. So you keep, okay, right in verse 1, it says, her idols are confounded. Well, that's a crazy word. What does it mean? Yabash. Strong's puts that into English how? Ashamed, confused, disappointed. Well, those idols are the demons. And I'd say they're disappointed now because we're laying it on them. But it's going to get worse. And then it says, Merodach is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken in pieces. That's what's going to scare them. Now, what army is going to go in and break the images in pieces? Do the Russians do that? No. Do the Chinese do it? No, they got their own idols. What about the North Koreans? No. What about the Muslims? Bingo. Who's coming in? The Muslims. For out of the north there cometh a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell there. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast. I don't understand with the beast what goes on. What's the word there for behemoth? Yeah, it's, it's an animal, maybe a big quadruped like a moose, a horse, a cow, I don't know. But yeah. In those days and in that time, saith the Lord, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together, going and weeping, they shall all go and seek Jehovah their God. They're weeping. That's the mourning from Zechariah 12. It happens all over the world because they wake up and realize who the Messiah is that they've been mocking. And then you got the children of Israel. That means the 10 tribes are waking up, and the children of Judah, they woke up. So this is the appearing. It says in those days. Let's break that down. Oops, it's giving me trouble. Yeah, this should be your meme. Yeah, it's okay those days. So it's not at the exact same time. But then it says in that time. Let's break that down because you can't trust the English. Yeah, it could be okay on that one. time. That's a specific. Children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together. Yeah. They shall ask the way to Zion. Okay. Because they were never there. Let us join ourselves to Jehovah in a perpetual covenant. Well, what happens in the wilderness? They enter the bond of the covenant and pass under the rod, right? That shall not be forgotten. Verse 8, Jeremiah 15, remove you out of the midst of Babylon and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, and be you as the he-goats are before the flock. I would say this is redemption, and it happened. They saw Yeshua in the clouds. He's going to cause to come against Babylon, America, an assembly of great heathen nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her from thence. She shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. So from the north country, it could mean north of Israel, like Iran or something, or it could mean north of the United States, but that doesn't add up because that's Canada. So I think here it's referencing countries north of Israel. And Chaldeans shall be a spoil. All that spoil her shall be satisfied. You know, they're going to get the booty. They're going to loot her. So if everything's burned up, there's nothing to loot. Why would they even come over there to loot? They love looting. Because you were glad, because you rejoiced, O you destroyers of my heritage. Because you are grown fat as the heifer, as grass, and bellow as bulls. It says, behold, the hindermost of the nations, the last of the nations, that's the daughter of Babylon. God only has 70 nations. Shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. It says, put yourself in array against Babylon round about. That's what they're going to do to Israel, but the two witnesses destroy them when they're round about. That's a siege. Here, they're successful against America. They're invading and everything else. Not the case in Israel. It's a reap what you sow type thing. You that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against the Lord. Shout against her round about. That's surrounding again. She hath given her hand. That's the surrendering. It would be very easy to understand that coward Trump just surrendering because he doesn't want to take any chances, and that's it. There, America surrenders. We'll all be your slaves. Her foundations have fallen, her walls are thrown down. That's probably the walls between Mexico and America. For it is the vengeance of the Lord. Take vengeance upon her as she hath. Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest, for fear. Well, it doesn't necessarily happen during the harvest. It's saying the one that works the sickle at the harvest time. That's your migrant workers that come in to work in the agriculture. For fear of the oppressing sword, they shall turn everyone to his people, and they shall flee everyone to his own land. Now, what is the oppressing sword? Well, the invaders are not going to be really like oppressing. Let's check that word, 32:38. Whoops. Violent, suppress. So the oppressing sword could be Trump getting them out of America. A subscriber brought that up a few months ago, and it's pretty accurate, I think. It could be it. It doesn't sound like, because the people that enter America are not going to be there to conquer and get them to submit like the Nazis did with France. They're coming in there to kill them. So the oppressing sword doesn't add up too good. Okay. So it could be Trump. It could be that. Israel is a scattered sheep. Okay, we know that. Blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't want to downplay it, but I don't have the time to do everything here and the strength. I will punish the king of Babylon and his land as I have punished the king of Assyria. That was an assassination, but it also should apply to the land and the king. So the king was assassinated. I think that's what it's talking about. So it could happen to Trump. And I will bring Israel again to its habitation. Next Exodus, the great one, next great one. And he shall feed on Carmel. Okay. In those days and in that time, saith the Lord, the lawlessness of Israel, the iniquity, lawlessness shall be sought by the enemies of Israel who try to convict us and attack us and stuff like that. And there shall be none, because God has taken our sins away in a day, in a moment, just boom. And that's that. And that's redemption, the appearing. And the sins of Judah, and they shall not be found. For I pardon them whom I reserve. So the lawlessness of Israel, the 10 tribes, and the sins of Judah are not going to be found. The sound of battle is in the land and of great destruction. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babel become a desolation among the goyim, the heathen? I have laid a snare for thee, thou art taken. Thou art also taken, O Babel, and thou wast not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against Jehovah. That's what Trump's doing, it's obvious. Come against her from the utmost border. Oh, Alaska, Canada, I guess. Open her storehouse, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left. Well, if they're getting the storehouses, which would be food, there's still some food. Slay all the bullocks. I think of the bulls, like the federal agents and the police, local police, stuff like that, state police. The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babel to declare in Zion. So they're coming to Israel. The vengeance of the Lord, of Jehovah Elohim, and the vengeance of his temple. So does that mean it's referencing vengeance from the old temple? It could be. Or is it referencing for the new temple? I think the old temple. Call together the archers against Babel, all that bend the bow. Okay, we go through that. Let none thereof escape. Recompense her accord. So if none escape, it seems to me that the believers are going to get out first. Doesn't it believe me? Let's read it. Jeremiah 50:29. Call together the archers against Babel, all you that bend the bow. Camp against it round about. That's like the siege against Israel, but we win that siege. America loses this one. All you that bend, they reap what they sow. All you that bend the bow against it round about, let none thereof escape. Recompense her She hath been proud against the Lord, against the Holy One of Israel. Therefore shall her young men fall in the street, all her men of war shall be cut off. Be careful if you got family in the military in that day, saith Jehovah. Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord, Adonai Jehovah of hosts, for thy day is come, the time and the most proud shall stumble and fall. Pride cometh before a fall, right? And none shall raise him up. And I will kindle a fire, and it says cities. It doesn't say inner cities. It says the word for cities. And it shall devour all round about him. So I think we really should be looking for fires to start popping up in cities. We're not seeing that. We're seeing wildfires. I'm pretty careful to look for this. So I think we're going to see more in the cities. Thus saith Jehovah of armies, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captive held them fast. They refused to let them go. This appears to be in the past, like the temple, I think. Now, I think that the people are going to get out on the Exodus before the big attack. Maybe. Likely. Why? Because when they swarm around and attack, they're not going to let anybody out. And the people in there are going to say, what are you, crazy? You're going to Israel? Look at Israel. It's crazy over there. What do you want to go there for? That's maybe what will happen. I don't know. The only cry or craving or yearning to go to Israel is going to be in the Israelites that are going to be turned around towards the Lord, and the non-Israelite believers, which are Israelites in reality. Their Redeemer is strong. Jehovah of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause, not plead, judge, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. Rest to where? The land of Israel, and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. So they're going to be very upset. A sword's upon the Chaldeans and upon the inhabitants of Babel and upon the princes, upon her. Wow, okay, so the sword means being attacked. A sword's upon the liars. Those are your espots. Not necessarily, but very much so. They shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men. They shall be dismayed. A sword is upon their horses, upon their chariots. A sword's upon their treasures. That's going to be looted. They shall be robbed. They shall be like women. They're not going to fight back. They're going to get scared. A drought's upon their waters. So it doesn't say the land, it says the waters. Check that. 43:25 Mayim. Yeah, waters, Mayim, water. And they shall be dried up. I guess we have some of that now. For it is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. Yep. It says, as God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith Jehovah, so shall no man abide there. Neither shall any son of man dwell therein. A people shall come from the north, that could be the north of Israel, a great nation. Okay, so people come from the north. That could be Iran, other countries. Maybe America doesn't destroy Iran. Iran destroys America, and then the other countries get scared because Iran will get a big head. Maybe, and they get rid of Iran. I don't know all the details yet. They shall hold the bow in the lands, and the interesting thing is, it says, behold, in verse 44, behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan River near me, unto the habitation of the strong, which would be Israel after redemption, but certainly not Jordan. But I will make them suddenly run away from her, being Israel, and who is like a chosen man, I may appoint over her. That's one of the two witnesses, I believe, maybe referencing Yeshua. Who will appoint me the time, and who is that shepherd that will stand before me? At the noise of the taking of Babel. See, we don't read about the noise of the taking of Israel when they lay siege to us. It doesn't happen. It doesn't get that far, but it does in America. The earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the heathen nations. It's going to be a big one. If the earth is moved, if that's a literal, what are they doing? I mean, what kind of bomb was that? Are there really nukes? Am I wrong about that? I doubt it. It might just be like a figure of speech or something. I don't know. 51, Jeremiah 51. Just say the Lord. I will raise up against Babel and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me, a destroying wind, and that's a storm or tempest. and will send unto Babel fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land, wealth and riches, whatever they're going to come here to pick up. In the day of trouble they shall be against her round about, surrounding her. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets. For Israel hath not been forsaken, nor Judah of his land. Well, that's again your Hosea 6:1 and 2 that the churches ignore. Of the Lord of hosts, though their land was filled with sin, it's removed in a day, against the Holy One of Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babel, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. See, but it doesn't say the day of vengeance. I'm not so sure this happens on the day of vengeance. It may be before. He will render unto her a recompense. I'm pretty sure it'll happen in the year of recompenses. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The heathen nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore the Goyim nations, the heathen nations, are mad. They're all crazy. He's crazy too. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Suddenly, you're not going to know it coming. You got to get that. And it's fast. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. So when she's fallen and she's getting destroyed, they try to heal her and she doesn't heal. We would have healed Babel, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go, every one into his own country. So they're still leaving. Okay. So it's very confusing to follow. Now there's people that are going back to their own countries so they can still get out. Let us, everyone, into some the destroying, suddenly fallen and destroyed. I guess they probably attacked America with planes and missiles and sleeper agents as well, I assume. Then the armies come in and loot the place. So there's still time for people to get out. And maybe the military that's going to invade lets them get out. I don't know. Let her judgment reach unto heaven, and is lifted even to the skies. Jehovah hath brought forth our righteousness, and let us declare in Zion the work of Jehovah our God. Okay, so that's again the next great exodus that come into Israel, Zion. Make bright the arrows. All right, it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. And again, I think we're probably looking at the old temple, the old temple that the Babylonians took out, which would have been Solomon's temple. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babel, make the watch strong. That's already going on. The walls of Babel, they don't have walls between the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, or Canada. It's between America and Mexico, and the watch is strong there. Yeah, the military's there and everything. Yeah, this is already happening for a while. Prepare the ambushes for Jehovah. Well, they're waiting for people to come across, and then they'll grab them or shoot them or whatever. For you're both devised and done. Thou that dwellest upon many waters. Well, you got the Great Lakes, you got 8,000 rivers, you got about that many lakes. Then you got the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic, and the Pacific. How about that? Does Mecca have those waters? No. Does the Vatican have those waters? No. It's America. Does Israel have those waters? No. Israel has a little bit of waters. It's not Israel. Come and the measure of the, because they go to Israel. How could it be Israel when they leave there and go to Israel and tell the people in Israel? What are we going to do? Leave Israel and then come back to Israel and tell us what went on when it happened? You know, it's insane to say this is Israel. But the churches, their teachers are rather insane, and people believe them. Jehovah of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men and with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. He hath made the earth by his power. He hath established the world by his wisdom, and hath stretched out the heaven by his understanding. When he uttereth his voice, there is a multitude of He maketh lightnings with rain, and bringeth forth the wind out of his treasures. So he's telling us he controls these things, not CERN or some other weather machine. It's idiotic. Why do you believe these people with that? Every man is brutish by his knowledge. And you have to understand that you don't even know 1% of what Jehovah knows. You don't even know 1/1,000,000th of 1% of what he knows. His knowledge is infinite. Yours is extremely limited to what goes on in this place, which is one day going to be blown up and destroyed and thrown away. Its purpose is no longer. The purpose is a testing ground for people. That's what he's using it for, is a testing ground. His is confounded by the graven image, for his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. Yeah. The portion of Yaakov is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel the rod of his inheritance. Jehovah of hosts is his name. So we're different. Now listen to this. Talking to Israel, you got to get your head wrapped around this. Thou art my battle axe. This is Israel, not America. And weapons of war. For with thee will I break in pieces the heathen nations. Well, America is a heathen nation. It's ours. And with thee will I destroy kingdoms. And with thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider. And with thee will I break in pieces the chariots and his rider. With thee also will I break in pieces man and woman. And with thee will I break in pieces old and young. And with thee will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock, and with thee will I break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen. And with thee will I break in pieces captains and rulers. We're going to be taking the land back. That's ours. That's how I'm reckoning this. And I will render unto Babel and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion. All the evil that America has done in Zion, in Israel, in your sight, in our sight. I just laid out to you the evil they did. Plus, they were involved in October 7th. Now, if Biden did it and then Trump comes along, it doesn't exonerate or get America off the hook. In your sight, saith the Lord. I remember, you go back to Nixon, there was a war in 73, I think. There was a war, and they had a treaty with Israel, and then Nixon calls Israel up and says, out of respect for the Muslim Arabs, I'm not going to give you the weapons for 5 days. If you make it through 5 days, I'll give it to you. That's what that piece of vermin told us, and then he got out of office. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith Jehovah. It's a mountain because it's such a big thing, a big country, a big powerful country. It looks like a mountain to other countries. And I will stretch out my hand upon thee and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee as a burnt mountain. Burnt mountain is good for nothing. Prepare the heathen nations against her, call together against her the kingdoms of Arat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. Those are the stand countries allied with Russia. It could be maybe like Armenia and Azerbaijan and that kind of stuff up there. I am not sure exactly, but they were around that area. Appoint a captain against her, cause the horses to come up. A captain means they're going to unite together under one guide or ruler. Cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars. Prepare against her the Goyim, the heathen nations, with the kings of the Medes. That's where the Median Empire was. They were involved too. This is a big deal. Thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babel. It doesn't say Babylon in the Hebrew text, it says Babel. They made Babylon up in the English, I don't know where they got it from. It says Babel, it means confusion. A desolation, and the old Babylon was Babel also. A desolation without inhabitant. That's the future of America. No survivalists make it. The mighty men of Babel have forborne to fight. No, they're just so scared they're going to give up. Hide. Forborne to fight, they have remained in their holds. They're locked up in their houses or their bug out shelters or whatever the heck they are. Their might hath failed. They became as women. They have burned her dwelling places. So somebody's going to run around burning the houses. Her bars are broken. One post shall run to meet another, one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babel that his city is taken at one end. That's DC. The passages are stopped and the reads. The daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor. That's where you separate the tares from the wheat. You get rid of the garbage. It's like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her. That takes us to Matthew 13, the tares and the wheat. The tares are garbage, you burn them up. You put them in bundles, burn them up, and the wheat you gather into the barn, which is Israel, the barn. A little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. That's it. So she seems to have her own harvest, so I think maybe that's where the next great Exodus starts. They go first. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, hath devoured me. He hath crushed me. He hath made me an empty vessel. He hath swallowed me up like a dragon. He hath filled his belly with the delicates. So he was running around. The leader of America is being compared to this, and he refers to him as this Nebuchadnezzar in another place. The violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babel. There it is. And the inhabitants of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Chaldea, that's America, shall Jerusalem say. Therefore, well, probably something else happens in the future because they're not saying that now. Most of them are not awake. Therefore, thus saith Jehovah, behold, I will judge thy cause I will plead thy cause, or judge, really, it should say, and take vengeance for thee, and will dry up her sea and make her springs dry. There you go with the water going away. And Babel shall become, he could do that in an hour or a few minutes if he wants to. And Babel shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons and astonishment. In their heat will I make in their heat, I will make their feasts, and I will make them drunken. See, that's like their orgies, their debauchery, and and they're going to go to sleep, and that they may rejoice in sleep, a perpetual sleep, and not wake up, saith the Lord. So it appears that they'll be partying over something, and they just don't make it. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter. They're not going to know what's going on until it starts happening. like rams with the he goats. How is Sheshach taken and how is praise? And the sea has come upon Babel, and that's probably to put the fires out after they finish looting and pillaging it. She is covered with the multitude of the waves thereof. Her cities are a desolation, a dry land, and a wilderness, a land wherein the dry land is probably indicative of the drought. It might happen at the end. It's very hard. There's so much here to get everything so precise. I will bring forth out of his mouth, Bel's mouth, them which he hath swallowed, and the nations, the heathen nations, shall not flow together any more unto him. Yea, the wall of Babel shall fall. My people, go you out of the midst of her. That's us. That's the people, right? My people. Go you out of the midst of her, and deliver you every man his soul from the fierce anger of Jehovah. See, I think this is before it really hits. Unless your heart faint and you fear, for the rumor shall be heard in the land, a rumor shall both come 1 year, and that in another year shall come a rumor and violence in the land, ruler against ruler. Yeah, you kind of have that, and had that for quite a while, right? Therefore, behold, the days come, I will do judgment upon the graven images of Babel, and her whole land shall be confounded. All her slain shall fall in the midst of her. Then the heaven and the earth and all that is therein shall sing for Babel, for the spoiler shall come unto her from the north, saith Jehovah. I think it's the north of Israel. So everybody's glad when she goes down. But you see people all over the internet that hate you when you talk about this because they're not God's. They're not with God. They're not God's people. As Babylon had, and there's no middle ground. You're with them or you're not, and they're not. They're with the enemy. That's it. As Babel hath caused the slain of Israel to fall. So right at October 7th, there was a big deal there. And we had in the history of Israel since 48, we had other incidents, like I told you about Nixon withholding the weapons and stuff. And in 1948, they put a weapons embargo on Israel. United States did, and the UN. And we couldn't get good weapons. And they knew we were being attacked by the Arabs, and they knew that Russia was against the embargo, selling weapons to the Arabs to attack us. Yet we made it because of God. To fall so you see, that's why they were afraid to attack Israel again, because Israel keeps winning. So that's why they want to have a fake Israel with satanic leaders and rabbis that teach trash and stuff like that. That's what they want. Shall fall the slain of all the earth. You that have escaped the sword, go away, stand not still. Remember Jehovah afar off, and let Yerushalayim come into your mind. Now maybe he gets them to go over here with, and it's not the appearing guy. Don't think so, but maybe, I don't know. Because it seems that they go first or something. We are confounded because we have heard reproach. Have covered our faces. Strangers are come into the sanctuary of the Lord's house. That sounds like the present, but I don't know. Wherefore, behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, that I will do judgment upon her graven images, and through all her land the wounded shall groan. What's going on is the same demonic entities, the whore and other demonic entities that were running the old Babel, are running America to be a great nation under Satan, like Babylon was, a demonic nation, and that's what's going on. That's why he thoughts about punishing them too, the idols, which are the demons. Though Babel should mount up to heaven and blah, 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 I'll still destroy it, he's saying, yet from me shall spoilers come unto her, saith the Lord. That means they're going to loot and plunder and pillage and rape and kill and everything else. A sound of a cry cometh from Babel, and great destruction from the land of the Chaldeans. Those are witches. That's what America's run by, witches in men's clothing. Because the Lord hath spoiled Babel, and destroyed out of her the great voice, when her waves do roar like great waters, a noise of their voice is uttered. Because the spoiler is come upon her, even upon Babel, and her thoughts and her mighty men are taken, every one of their bows is broken, for Jehovah Elohim of recompenses shall surely require. And I will make drunken her princes and her wise men, captains and rulers, and they shall sleep a perpetual sleep, and not wake, saith Jehovah, saith the King, whose name is Jehovah of hosts. The broad walls of Babel shall utterly be broken. Now the broad can mean long walls, the Mexican wall. And her high gates shall be burned with fire, and the people shall labor in vain, and the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. Like Satan has made us weary through the years. It happens to his people. Okay, so I think we covered it. Let me see if we got questions, and then we'll do some spiritual warfare and good stuff like that. Okay, let me get into the live stream and see if we're getting questions. So I hope this helped give you some insight into this, because it looks like it's coming up on us. And there's a lot of people that are just never going to agree with you on this, and you know, you could give them the evidence all day long till you're blue in the face, and they're just not going to want to believe it. And they're not going to submit and do what God wants. They're going to keep doing what they want to believe. Not believe the Bible, believe what they want. Yeah, it's great if you hit the like button or subscribe too. Okay. Now you guys can agree with me. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I command you unclean spirits to come out of every member of the government, elected or appointed or employee or in the military or intelligence services pertaining to the countries of Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Romania, thinking Belarus, Georgia, the country, Greece, Cyprus, Turkey, the UK, Germany and Italy. Depart from all these leaders immediately. You're bound from being in them anymore. You must immediately go. This is done b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with me that the Lord will honor this binding, and the unclean spirits got to leave them. And I further command you unclean spirits not to go into any person that owns, that works for any of these countries' governments, or is an elected or appointed official in any of these governments. You shall not go in them. You're bound from going in them for the next 5 years continuously, beginning now, and you're bound from appearing to them, from guiding them, leading them, directing them, helping them, assisting them, giving them any advice or anything for 5 years continuously. Beginning now, you're so bound. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And you can agree with that, and I'll be back in a moment. You don't have to agree with it. Agree with it if you want to. Not yet, no. Okay. All right, let's see. I bind you unclean spirits from doing anything to bother, disturb, upset, cause loss of money or expenditure of money, or prevent the accumulation of wealth and money. And you shall not turn any people, governments, corporations, or beasts or critters against any of these true believers and their household. For 5 years continuously, beginning now, you are bound from doing such things, in any previous work is now made null and void, bound from continuing. And if you agree with me, you can agree with this binding, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And I loose, my Heavenly Father, on all the true believers, your Holy Spirit, your gifts of the Spirit, your shalom peace, your joy, your happiness, your calm, your rest, your clarity of being able to see things, and your discernment, which is related to clarity, that you could understand what's really going on, that these people could really understand what's going on. And they have rest in you in these difficult times when we're waiting for things to wrap up and us to go into redemption. So we pray for these things to come on us in a mighty way. You loose them on us in a mighty way. My Heavenly Father, I pray, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree. Now you should be starting to feel better. I command all you unclean spirits to cease. I bind all you unclean spirits to stop communicating with anybody that works for the governments of the following countries, and it shall apply to appointed and elected officials and employees. It shall apply to military, it shall apply to intelligence services, and so forth. And this binding for you means you cannot communicate with these people, appear to them, guide them, lead them, direct them, help them, assist them, reward them, threaten them, or have anything to do with them. And it also applies to the members of their household that live with them. And this binding begins now and lasts for 5 years continuously, starting now, and shall apply to the governments of Israel, the United States, Lebanon, Gaza, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Oman, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and Iran. This is all done irrevocably. There's no workarounds for this. This is all done, this binding, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you could agree with me, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. When you agree with me, you should do it in Yeshua's name, because it says all, do everything in Yeshua's name. Oh, since we're at it, let's do the Kohanim blessing. Why not? Does it say I can't do the Kohanim blessing every week? No. The rabbis, I think, do it once a year, but what do we care what they do? They call Yeshua a bastard and not the Son of God and not a prophet, and what do we care what they say? It's like listening to the church. You want to go listen to the church, all you're gonna hear is Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog starts off with Israel living in peace and safety without bars and walls, with great riches, cattle, gold and silver. If you think that's how we're living over here, you got big rocks in your head. Big rocks. I'm in Numbers 6:22. Being a Kohanim and in Israel where he accepts you, and being filled with the Holy Spirit, I will do this for real in English. And I'll tell you the parts of it when I'm doing it for real, but I'll read it so you understand. I'm starting in Numbers 6:23, rather, not 20. No, it's 22, you could say. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, or Moshe is his real name, speak unto Aaron and unto his sons. Now I'm actually a son of Aaron, many, many, many generations removed, saying, on this wise you shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them. Now I do this for real. Jehovah bless thee and keep thee. Jehovah make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. Jehovah lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. And I put the name Jehovah upon the children of Israel, and Jehovah will bless them B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach and agree with me. Why not? Agree with me. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, agree with me. Agree with me in the name of Yeshua. We never did that before. The Lord just showed me that one. This ought to be pretty interesting. I like it. What's not to like? What's not to love? I loose upon every person who says there's some sort of a minister of the gospel, of Yeshua or Jesus or Jehovah or Jehovah, whatever they use, that whenever said people, wherever they are, says something intentionally lying and deceiving people about these things, the Bible and the Son of God and the prophets and their teaching, that you would loose boils on them, like what happened in Egypt with Moses and Aaron. I would ask you, Father God, Jehovah, to loose boils on them so they learn a lesson not to do this anymore. And I ask this B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can join in and ask the Lord also, agree, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. When you do, you say, I agree, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay? That's what I would do. Do all things in the name of Yeshua. All right. I bind any unclean spirits from trying to stop any nation in the world from going to war, and I bind them, any nation I bind any and all unclean spirits not only from stopping nations from going to war, but also I bind them from having these nations start wars. So they have nothing to do with any country or nation beginning a war or stopping a war. They're completely out of it. And I bind all these unclean spirits, wherever they are, all of them, from administering or running or guiding or leading or directing or controlling the practices and policies of any country. Your day is over. It's stopped. You're bound from doing these things anymore. Beginning now for 5 years continuously, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can join in and agree with me. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. I bind you unclean spirits from doing anything to any true believer that would impede, hinder, prevent, or diminish the joy and the peace and the calm and the rest that these people enjoy, and the gifts from Jehovah. And you shall do nothing to take that away, weaken it, dampen it, or hinder it. You shall not give them any negative thoughts, ideas, or notions, or worrisome thoughts, ideas, or notions, or do anything to undermine or reduce their faith and their fear, or cause any problems for them of any sort. And this also applies to all their households. And this is for 5 years continuously, beginning now, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And I ask you to agree with me and B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. All right, let's go into the live stream. I bind you unclean spirits from being able to remain inside any person that serves you, unclean spirits, any of you or all of you, once they begin to deceive any true believer about any matter or lie to them about any matter. You unclean spirits are bound from remaining in these people anymore. You must immediately come out from these people, never to return unto them again, without warning them beforehand or explaining it to them after the fact. And this is all done b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you could join in. I bind you, unclean spirits, all of you, from surveillancing, observing, following, collecting data and information on any true believer and their household. You shall do no data collection or nothing. You shall have no surveillance of them, their vehicle, their animals, their pets, people that live in their household, their communications by phone or internet or any other way, in person or otherwise, or their travels with car or on foot or with other vehicles or planes. No surveillance whatsoever on these people for a period of time beginning now and lasting 5 years continuously, b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And you're also bound from getting any collection of information about any of these true believers or their activities and any person that lives in the house with them. And that could be financial or any other kind. And this is all done irrevocably for 5 years continuously, beginning now, b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. So we'll stop them from knowing stuff. I further bind all you unclean spirits from using any data previously collected regarding any true believer and the people that live in the household with this person. You shall not be able to retain this information, use it, work with it, profit from it, or gain anything from it in any way, shape, or form for all time. This is done irrevocably, and you are so bound, b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree. See, they run all these intelligence agencies predominantly collect data on you all, so they could control people. They're constantly paranoid. I bind you unclean spirits from remaining inside any person who holds himself out as a rabbi or a leader of any messianic congregation anywhere in the world. You shall not be able to remain in these people. You have to come out from all of these people immediately, never return unto them again. This is how you're so bound, b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. I command all you unclean spirits that are in any person that has any authority, control, or of any mosque, or works in a mosque, or teaches in a mosque, anywhere in Iran, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey. You shall come out from any person you're in immediately, never return unto any other person again for 5 years continuously, b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. And I further bind all you unclean spirits from guiding, leading, directing, helping, assisting any person who you are in that works in a mosque or a messianic congregation in any of these countries. And this is done irrevocably, b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. Okay, I think we gave them enough to worry about today. We've certainly loaded them up. They got plenty of problems. plenty of problems. And that's pretty much what I got for today. So I'm Moshe. Please pray for me. My hand thing is getting a lot better. It still could use prayers a little bit there. It's probably 80, 85% going or something like that, 75%. And just keep praying for that thing to clear up dry, flaky skin. I'm just using moisturizing agents on it. Pray for me and my wife for our peace, safety, protection, joy. Pray for our finances. The offerings are getting slim. I don't know what's up with that. People like it, but I don't get it. But we'll see. So you can pray about my offerings picking up, and pray for better videos, that I make better videos, and pray that I get these tablets working. Please pray for our birds and dogs that are all rescues. They be happy, healthy, and whole. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And pray we get more insights into binding, loosing, prayer, and spiritual warfare. And I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. And I'm out, and I hope you got something out of this. And you could always communicate with me by email or whatever. And I'm available if you need to do emergency binding and stuff like that. And that's what I got. So I am out. If I figure out how to shut this thing off, I don't know if I got the controls here. The controls not here. Oh, this ought to be interesting. Let's see, what do we do? It won't go away. There got to be a way to do this. Let's think. I may have to just shut down and let it shut off that way. See, I get really tired of these upgrades because they mess you up. How could this be? There's no control to turn this off. So I'll have to just shut down, I guess. There's nothing going on here. Let's see. Which one is shut down? I think it's this one. No, that's the volume. Oh, now it came up.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand that. Could you please rephrase your question?
Close the live stream on YouTube. No, I got to type it.